At 65 years old, Margaret was a figure of strength and quiet resilience. With deep lines scribed on her face by time, she carried tales of laughter and sorrow from her life before widowhood. Her husband, Thomas, had passed 2 winters ago, leaving behind cherished memories and a home filled with echoes of love. Since then, she had felt the weight of solitude as heavy as the rocks that jutted from the cliffs outside their town. Every morning at dawn, before the sun painted the skies with warm hues, Margaret would pull on her worn boots and step outside. Her loyal German shepherd, Max, trotted beside her, ever watchful and devoted. Together they walked to the edge of the cliff where Margaret had made a brave decision to carve a farm into the rugged land that many deemed unfit for planting. Why not give it a try, she would tell herself as she looked down at the sprawling valley below. If I don't try, I'll never know. Margaret spent long hours digging with her hands and shaping the ground. She envisioned rows of lush vegetables, cabbage bursting with green leaves, rich yellow corn swaying gently in the breeze, juicy tomatoes ripening under the sun, and sweet orange carrots nestled beneath the soil. Each day was a struggle against nature's unpredictability, but she found strength in her purpose. The townsfolk often laughed at what they considered folly, a woman farming on the edge of a cliff. They would shake their heads and chuckle as they passed by. In their eyes, she was simply a lonely old woman chasing after dreams that were out of reach. Yet Margaret remained undeterred, motivated by an inner fire and fortified by companionship with Maximum. As spring slid into summer, she sensed that something was shifting, not just in her heart but in the world around her. The cliffs outside town loomed tall and imposing, their jagged edges carved by time and the relentless wind. They rose like ancient guardians over the valley, their rocky faces glistening in the sunlight. Wildflowers clung to crevices, displaying bursts of color against the gray stone, while hawks soared high above, a testament to the freedom of the wilderness. Yet, beneath their beauty lay a harsh reality. The ground was rocky and uneven, making it almost impossible to till. Margaret often stood at the cliff's edge, gazing down at the sprawling valley where her dreams of a farm danced before her eyes. "This land may be rough," she would whisper to Max, who listened intently, "but it can nourish life if given a chance." With that spirit in mind, she faced many challenges as she began her farming venture. The first obstacle was the soil itself. It was dry and rocky, hardly suitable for planting vegetables. Armed with nothing more than her determination and an old shovel, she painstakingly dug through layers of tough earth, sometimes blisters forming on her hands from the hard work. Water was another issue. There were no streams nearby. To overcome this, Margaret devised a system to collect rainwater in barrels placed strategically around the cliffside. She would climb down to fill them after each storm, carefully rationing her precious resource. Every drop counted as she nurtured her fragile seedlings. Growing vegetables in such an isolated spot wasn't easy, but Margaret felt alive with purpose. Each day brought new struggles, wild animals nibbling at her crops or sudden storms threatening her hard work, but she faced them all with grit and grace. Every challenge is just another step towards success, she would remind herself, embodying the spirit of perseverance that defined her life on those rugged cliffs. As word spread through town about Margaret's ambitious farm project, laughter followed her like a shadow. The townsfolk gathered at the saloon, shaking their heads in disbelief. "A farm on the cliffs? That old woman has lost her mind," one man chuckled, his voice loud and mocking. "Can you imagine? She thinks she can grow vegetables up there," another added, slapping his knee as he guffawed. "I reckon the only thing she'll be harvesting is a whole lot of trouble." Margaret could hear the whispers as she walked through the town square, her heart heavy but her head held high. "There goes crazy Margaret," a woman said, casting a glance in her direction. "What's next?" "A chicken coop up there." Despite the laughter that rang in her ears, Margaret remained unfazed. She knew what she was doing, and deep down, she believed that her hard work would prove them wrong. One morning, as she prepared to head back to the cliffs with Max trotting beside her, she overheard a group of children playing nearby. "Do you think she talks to her plants?" one child teased. "Maybe they're her only friends now." Margaret chuckled softly to herself at the innocence of their words. Yes, talking to her plants felt comforting, even if it seemed silly to others. Every seed has a story, she thought with a smile. Though the townsfolk dismissed her efforts as foolishness, their laughter only fueled Margaret's determination. She whispered to Max as they reached their rocky patch of earth, "Just wait and see, I'll grow something beautiful up here." And while they scoffed at her dreams, Margaret remained undeterred, believing firmly that one day they would see the fruits of her labor, and their laughter would turn into respect. With the first light of dawn breaking over the cliffs, Margaret rose each day, eager to nurture her crops. Armed with her trusty shovel and a heart full of hope, she set to work planting seeds for cabbage, corn, tomatoes, and carrots. The rocky soil was unforgiving, but she approached it with determination. "Today is the day, Max," she would say with a smile to her loyal dog. "Let's make this land bloom." Margaret carefully dug holes in the earth, placing each seed gently within its new home before covering it with soil. She envisioned vibrant green leaves unfurling under the sun and sweet vegetables thriving against all odds. "Just you wait," she whispered to the seeds as she packed down the dirt firmly. Every step of planting was labor-intensive. She spent hours kneeling on the ground, her hands sore yet satisfied after hours of toil. Margaret knew that nurturing life required patience. She watered each patch diligently from her rainwater barrels and mulched around the seedlings with small stones to keep moisture in. As weeks turned into months, Margaret watched over her plants like a protective mother. She would visit them daily, inspecting their progress and whispering encouragement as if they could hear her words. "You're doing great," she'd say to a sprout pushing through the soil, its tiny leaves reaching for the sunlight. The townsfolk often watched from a distance as they went about their chores, still chuckling at what they deemed an impossible dream. But Margaret paid them no mind. Instead, she sang softly while working, letting her voice carry across the cliffs like a soothing breeze. With every seed that sprouted into life, her heart swelled with pride. Each little green shoot represented not just food but proof that her hard work was worthwhile. "If I can grow here," she thought confidently one afternoon while wiping sweat from her brow, "then I can grow anywhere." As the seasons changed, so too did the fortunes of Margaret's farm. Spring brought gentle rains that soaked the dry earth, and Margaret reveled in every drop that filled her rainwater barrels. The cabbage leaves unfurled into lush green fronds, while the corn plants grew tall and sturdy, dancing in the warm breeze. "Look at you go," she would cheer to her crops, feeling as if they were celebrating alongside her. But summer soon arrived with its own challenges. The sun blazed fiercely, and the winds whipped across the cliffs like a relentless army. Days turned into weeks without a single drop of rain, leaving the earth parched and cracking beneath the weight of dust. The once thriving plants began to wilt, their vibrant colors fading to a dull shade. Margaret's heart sank as she knelt in the dirt, desperately checking on her seedlings. "Please hold on," she whispered, wiping sweat from her brow. She moved quickly to ration her rainwater, carefully pouring it around each struggling plant. Then one fateful day, dark storm clouds rolled in over the cliffs, a promise of relief. Margaret watched as lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. "Thank you, nature," she exclaimed, feeling hope surge within her. The rain poured down in sheets, drenching the thirsty ground and revitalizing her crops. Overjoyed, she danced in the rain with Max by her side, splashing through puddles as the world around them came alive with renewed energy. The fall arrived, bringing a bounty of harvests. Crimson tomatoes burst with flavor, carrots grew sweet and firm beneath the earth, and golden corn was ready for gathering. In that moment of triumph, as she filled her basket with vegetables under a brilliant sunset sky, Margaret felt a sense of accomplishment that silenced all doubts. Her hard work had paid off. Nature had shown her both challenges and rewards during this journey on the cliffs. As the crisp autumn air settled over the town, a sudden sense of unease gripped the residents. Rumors of a famine began to spread like wildfire, igniting panic and fear. The crops in the valley, once abundant and ripe, had succumbed to an unexpected blight. Farmers who had laughed at Margaret's efforts now faced an empty harvest and dwindling supplies. On a particularly chilly morning, Margaret walked into town with her basket filled with fresh vegetables, hoping to share her bounty with those in need. As she approached the market, she noticed worried faces and hushed whispers among the townsfolk. "Have you heard? The crops are failing everywhere," one woman exclaimed, clutching her shawl tightly. People are saying we might not have enough to last through the winter, another man added, his voice laced with concern. Margaret's heart sank as she realized how serious the situation had become. Determined to help, she stepped forward. I have plenty of cabbage and carrots. I can share them with anyone who needs food, she offered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. But instead of gratitude, she was met with skepticism. Why would we take food from crazy Margaret? A man sneered, still haunted by his earlier laughter at her farm. However, as days passed and desperation grew, the townspeople began to look towards the cliffs where Margaret had planted her crops. They watched in disbelief as she harvested beautiful vegetables while their own fields remained barren. As word spread that Margaret's farm was thriving despite the famine below, pride turned into respect. Whispers of admiration replaced laughter. Maybe she wasn't so crazy after all. The widow's quiet strength in the face of adversity began to change hearts, opening new eyes to the value of her hard work on those rugged cliffs. As the weeks of uncertainty stretched on, the townspeople began to gather at the edges of Margaret's farm, curiosity replacing their earlier ridicule. They watched in awe as she worked tirelessly, her hands deftly harvesting vegetables that glistened under the sun. Whispers filled the air as more residents arrived, abandoning their doubts. Look at all the food she's bringing in, a woman exclaimed, her voice filled with astonishment. Maybe we should have listened to her instead. I reckon we were wrong to laugh at her, a man said, scratching his head as he peered over the cliff. That widow has done what none of us could. Margaret caught snippets of their conversations but kept her focus on her harvest. She smiled when she heard one familiar voice. Remember when we thought building a farm on that cliff was crazy, a farmer said to his friend, shaking his head in disbelief. We didn't think she had it in her. Yeah, the other replied, staring at the bounty Margaret was gathering. But look at this. It's impressive. She saved us all. One day, as Margaret prepared to head into town with a fresh supply of vegetables, she found herself surrounded by several townsfolk who had come to help gather her crops. We want to lend a hand, one young man said, grinning. You've shown us what's possible out here. Feeling surprised yet grateful, Margaret nodded. Thank you. Every bit of help counts. As they worked together, there was laughter and camaraderie, completely different from the mockery that had once echoed through the town. In that moment, Margaret realized how far she had come. Once deemed crazy Margaret, she was now a symbol of resilience and innovation. By evening's end, as they loaded crates filled with fresh produce for the market, one of the women turned to Margaret and said, "You're no longer just a widow on a cliff, you're our inspiration." The warmth in her voice echoed through Margaret's heart, and at last, she felt accepted and respected by the very people who had once doubted her. With her harvest in full swing, Margaret felt a new sense of purpose as the town grappled with the famine. She gathered baskets filled with fresh cabbage, corn, tomatoes, and carrots, the vibrant colors a stark contrast to the worry etched on the faces of her neighbors. "There's more than enough here," she said to Max, who wagged his tail in agreement. One chilly morning, she made her way into town, baskets piled high with her bounty. As she entered the marketplace, whispers of disbelief turned into expressions of gratitude. "Margaret! You've brought food," a woman exclaimed, rushing toward her with wide eyes. Margaret smiled warmly. "Yes, I have plenty to share. Please take what you need." She began distributing vegetables to everyone who approached her, watching their faces light up in relief. "Thank you so much," a young mother said as she accepted a bundle of carrots for her family. "I didn't know how we would get through this winter." Another man stepped forward, hesitantly taking a few ears of corn. I was one of those who laughed at you," he admitted, shame coloring his cheeks. "You've truly done something remarkable." Margaret waved him away with kindness. "It's about helping each other now. We're all in this together." As word spread through the town about Margaret's generosity, more people arrived seeking food and support. Each time someone expressed their gratitude, Margaret felt a swell of warmth in her heart. One elderly woman took both of Margaret's hands in hers and said softly, "You've shown us what true strength looks like." The townsfolk gathered around Margaret as she continued sharing her harvest, realizing that not only had she saved herself through hard work but also offered solace and sustenance to those who had once doubted her. Through kindness and generosity, Margaret transformed from crazy Margaret to a beloved figure, an anchor for the community in their time of need. As the weeks passed and the town began to heal from the famine, a newfound sense of community blossomed among the residents. Margaret found joy in this unity, realizing that her farm had not only provided sustenance but had also brought people together in ways she never imagined possible. Every Saturday, the townsfolk gathered at her cliffside farm, bringing their families and their own stories, eager to lend a hand and share their gratitude. One afternoon, as children played nearby and laughter filled the air, Margaret watched with Max at her side, feeling a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. "You see, Max? Look how they've all come together," she said softly, scratching behind his ears. He wagged his tail, sensing her happiness. "We used to worry about our crops alone," one farmer remarked as he helped sow new seeds for the following season. "Now we have each other. Thank you, Margaret, for showing us what true community looks like." Margaret smiled as she replied, "We are stronger together. I may have started this farm alone, but it has become all of ours." On a bright morning, during a gathering at the market, a young woman approached her with a small gift, handmade bread wrapped in cloth. "We wanted to thank you properly," she said, radiating sincerity. "You fed us when we were hungry, not just with food but with hope." Margaret felt tears welling in her eyes. She had turned her solitude into strength and nurtured not only crops but relationships. In that moment, she understood that helping others had filled the void of loneliness she once felt. As the seasons continued to change, Margaret knew this was a new beginning, not just for herself but for the entire town. The laughter that once marked her as an outsider now echoed as a sign of belonging. Each day felt brighter as she embraced the warmth of community, knowing she had created something truly special high upon those cliffs. As Margaret stood on the cliffs, overlooking the thriving farm that had become a symbol of resilience and hope, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The laughter of the townsfolk that once mocked her dreams now echoed with gratitude and camaraderie. She realized that her determination to carve a life from the rocky soil had not only transformed her own existence but had also changed the hearts of those around her. Through the hardships of droughts and famine, Margaret learned that kindness and perseverance could break down walls and build bridges. She had faced solitude with strength, turning it into a source of connection as she opened her heart and home to others in need. Her unwavering spirit became a beacon of hope for the community, reminding them that even in tough times, one person's efforts could create ripples of change. "Together, we can weather any storm," she often told her neighbors as they worked side by side. With each passing day, they grew more united, their bond strengthened by shared struggles and collective triumphs. Margaret understood that resilience was not just about enduring challenges, it was about reaching out, lifting one another up, and finding joy in helping others. Each vegetable harvested was a testament to the power of hard work and compassion, a reminder that even amidst despair, there is light to be found. As she watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues over the cliffs, Margaret felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had discovered that while she may have started this journey alone, she was now part of something much greater, a community woven together by kindness, respect, and shared dreams. This was not just a new beginning for herself but a powerful lesson for all. With determination and love, anything is possible.